Welcome back to the Angry Cast and No Man's Sky, the Chronicles. Why is it that some people look at their life in terms of being so many years removed from something? And what point do you stop taking count of how many years you've been that removed from something? This year is, was basically, my 25th high school reunion. Yeah, it's been 25 years since I graduated high school. Now, I don't typically count the number of years since I have graduated college. It was 20 years, by the way. Maybe that's because we don't typically commemorate the year we graduated college, whether because we have opportunities to go beyond just a basic 4-year degree, or because we just don't typically have a college reunion. There's nothing to mark that moment. Hell, I don't even know because I didn't even go to my college graduation. We have to understand something. There were 36,000 undergrads at my school. I don't think anyone would have noticed me missing, nor was my name probably called out and stand up. We didn't go up on stage and get our diploma. Yet, there I was, some 3, 5, 7, 10, 12, 15 years out of high school saying, I can't believe it's been 3, 5, 7, 10, 12, 15 years since I've been out of high school. And in these now 25 years since graduating, I have been to a total of 1 reunion. I'm 1 for 5. I went to only 1 reunion despite being very aware and vocal about how many years it has been since I was out of high school. Yeah, 20%. Look, I enjoyed high school. It was fun for me. I had good friends and had a great time. But I went to the last one, the 20th, because I felt it was somewhat of a milestone. Now, I did attend a breakfast for the 10th, which was basically across the street from where I was living at the time. Otherwise, I really wasn't that interested in going. But for the 20th, I felt this was something I needed to do. Perhaps it was because I was almost 40 at the time. Perhaps it was because it was a new chapter in my life. I was going through a divorce. Perhaps I just felt that there was some unfinished business to figure out, and I went to see about some closure. What I found out was that any questions I had about my life in the last 20 years weren't being answered by hanging out with people I rarely saw in the last 20 years, though communicated somewhat through social media. I mean, I didn't unlock any secrets of the universe in that one evening. I didn't look back and think, yeah, I really should have gone to the other 3 in this upcoming one. I knew that it was a small moment in my life. We all came together and began talking and planning and getting back into each other's lives, but I said, that probably after the 20th, we'd also drift back apart. I figured we would probably go back to our little corners of the world and keep each other at a distance over social media. And even that has changed in the last 5 years. I remember, the people I remember from high school were not the same people I saw that night. They were not the same people I see today. A lot has changed in the last 25 years. A lot has changed in the last 3. A lot of people can't wait to get away from that orbit of counting years from high school graduation. Their time in the halls of their local public high school could have been pretty difficult. It could have been sad, or cruel even. We lived in a different world back then. The advances we have made in social equality were small, but very impactful when our parents were teenagers, but then a huge gap of 40 years before we even began to rethink most of the basic tenets of acceptance and tolerance. Think about that. The advances we made in social equality were small, but very impactful when our parents were teenagers. And I'm talking about the 60s and maybe even the early 70s. We're talking about desegregation and civil rights. That was in the 60s, late 60s. And then there's a 40-year gap before things started to happen again. Meanwhile, kids in high schools today have worse things to think about. Drugs and violence are more rampant than they were 25 years ago. It will be I hate to say this, but it's going to be 20 years since Columbine next spring. Now, knowing the odds, I simultaneously scoff and worry that my own child will be in high school by the time my 30th reunion rolls around. And the odds are so small, but I'm sure every parent, including those that Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and Sandy Hook never truly believed that they'd have to worry either. And we've had a few times that in the last couple of years where weird things have happened. Mostly kids being stupid or saying the wrong thing or being picked up and misunderstood, but some have been legitimate threats. Nearby my house, a kid was arrested for plotting an attack. It's just something you have to realize as a parent and accept. But kids these days have a lot more to worry about, and their unfortunate truth is that they may be marking time in years since someone they know has passed. Now, as we get older, those we love will ultimately be taken from us, and we will begin remembering that it's been X years since Y passed away. I look back at how it's been 4 years since my first cat died, a year and a half and 6 months since the other two dies, respectively. One in January and one in December of the same year. It's sad, sure, and I'm not sure how healthy it is to remind ourselves how long it's been since that person left us or that animal left us. Perhaps it's better to remember how many years or memories they gave us, focusing on the positive impact on our lives instead of focusing on the absence from our lives. But in all fairness, I do want to give you a little bit of a list. It's been this many years since, and I felt that these items were somewhat impactful and poignant in our history, so I will go down through them, and then I will just leave you in silence. It's been 1 week since you looked at me. Okay, I'm kidding. I could not throw that out there. I could not avoid that one. Sorry. I'm done. It's been 7 years since the end of the Iraq War, the second Iraq War. It's been 9 years since the first version of Minecraft was released to the public. It's been 11 years since the introduction of the iPhone. It's been 15 years since the beginning of the Second War in Iraq. It's been 16 years since the attacks on 9/11 and the War on Terror began, and also the release of the first Xbox. It's been 21 years since the movie Titanic was released. It's been 22 years since the first Toy Story came out, and also 22 years since the verdict in the OJ trial was passed. It's been 23 years since the Sony PlayStation came out. It's been 24 years since Forrest Gump was released and Kurt Cobain died. It's been 25 years since the first text message was sent, the MP3 became a thing, and the first Jurassic Park was released, and I graduated high school. It's been 27 years since the first web page was launched and the beginning and end of the Gulf War, a couple of months apart. It's been 29 years since the first Simpsons episode aired. Think about that, 29 years for The Simpsons. It's been 32 years since the Challenger shuttle disaster. It's been 33 years since Rocky IV was released and the US release of the Nintendo Entertainment System. It's also been 33 years since the first fully CGI character was used on film. If you know what that is, let me know in the comments. It's been 34 years since the first Ghostbusters movie was released and the first PG-13 movie was released. Again, if you know the answer, leave it in the comments. I know. It's been 36 years since the first compact disc. It's been 38 years since Pac-Man was released in arcades. It's been 41 years since the first Star Wars movie came out and the Atari 2600 was released. And also Elvis died. It's been 43 years since I was born and the end of the American military involvement in Vietnam happened. It's been 46 years since the first email was sent. 46 years, email. It's been 49 years since Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. It's been 50 years since Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. It's been 54 years since the Civil Rights Act was passed and the first live American television performance of the Beatles. It's been 55 years since JFK was assassinated in Texas. It's been 56 years since the first commercial modem was released. It's been 63 years since the first polio vaccine came into use. It's been 65 years since the armistice was signed, signaling the end of fighting in the Korean War. It's been 73 years since the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and the end of World War II. It's been 77 years since the bombing of Pearl Harbor. It's been 100 years since the end of World War I. And then lastly, it's been 115 years since the first car, a Ford Model A, was produced.